seated. Well, big thank you to Pastor Mark. Whoever sings the fifth verse of that song, huh? If you don't read music, you're kind of guessing, I hope we're on the right syllable with the right note. And well, Mark, thank you so much for keeping us on our odd-numbered toes. I had a great phone call this week, and actually, providentially, another visit just right out of the blue this morning. The phone call was from our young wounded warrior, retired Marine Corporal. His name is Daniel Riley. I had probably maybe 15 people in the various Christmas services ask me about Daniel. They were used to seeing him at church. He wasn't at church this year. He's relocated to San Diego. It's 3 years in. He's doing marvelously well, by the way. He's on the board of Cheryl Jensen's Vail Wounded Warrior Project. He's rung the bell to open the New York Stock Exchange. He's given presentations to business leaders in New York. He's testified in front of congressional committees. I mean, this is a young man who's God has really anointed after some profoundly life-threatening injuries. So Daniel called me this week, and he said, well, I bought a ring. We were having breakfast. It seemed like a good time, so I asked her to marry me over breakfast, and she said yes. I'm like, Daniel, that's amazing. Wow, I didn't know you were going to do that, Thank you for the call. I said some other things I can't share with you publicly here. And I said, wow, this is great. Just what a great way to bring in the new year. As we were literally, Mark was announcing the first Noel in Vail. A young man from South Carolina at the Vail Chapel this morning got up with a young woman, walked to the back, and introduced his new fiancée to me. They were engaged on January 1st up at Eagle's Nest. Another good reason to ski in the Vail Valley. It's just amazing. I've been thinking a lot about, being married. And interestingly enough, the distance between Daniel, or Jordy is the young man's name this morning, and me. This week, we held up, my wife and I, we were getting ready. We had some kids over, Vail Christian High School students over for New Year's Eve. And so we're getting the house ready, and my wife and I hold up a can opener. And she said, where did we get this? How did this get here? And I said, was it a wedding gift? And 10 minutes later, no, it wasn't a wedding gift. Was it, we were camping and we ran out. We brought the cans of food, but we didn't bring the opener. So this has a plastic grip. This was the camping trip in 1994. I think that's it, yes. And I said, honey, how do we get that garage? We have a whole garage and it's filled with boxes. Where did those come from? I have no memory of accumulating all that stuff. It just magically, we're that couple, really? We're that couple that has the garage full of boxes and they're all neatly ordered? How did that happen? We're almost 22 years married. Someone must have brought them in at night, all these traditions. Our kids say, we've got to eat this meal or sing that song or watch this video. This is the way we've always done it. And I thought, really? We're that couple? Toasting New Year's Day at midnight, teaching some of these the students at Vail Christian how to actually toast. We didn't use champagne with them, but how to toast. We're that couple, really? Well, I went upstairs this week and I looked at this young groom. So when Julie and I were married, the photographer gave us a bonus picture. Some of you have gotten the bonus picture when you got married. It's a huge, ridiculously large photo print of Julie and I standing at the altar of Emmanuel Chapel at Virginia Seminary. 2 days after I graduated Virginia Seminary and received my Master of Divinity degree, we were married in that chapel. It's now burned to the ground. That's kind of a bummer. The chapel no longer exists. But there's this huge picture. We didn't know what to do with it. So we framed it, and we never had a place to put it. When we moved into the rectory in 1996, I said to Julie, we've got to hang this picture somewhere. She said, great, hang it in the closet. No one's going to see this picture. So, and the reason why you're not going to see this picture is because I had a mustache. Oh, awful. What was I thinking? So here we are, standing in this picture. And literally this week, I walked into the closet, and I turned around, and I looked at this 27-year-old groom. And I spoke to him. Like Richard Nixon in the hallways of the White House, I actually talked to the groom. I said, Did you know where you'd be? I looked at this young man, the mustache, awful. He's full of lots of liquid vinegar and several other kinds. He had no idea that the Vail Valley even existed. He'd never been to Colorado, ever. He had no idea about kids. This guy didn't know how to listen at all. He knew how to talk. This guy really didn't know about perseverance or patience at all. He didn't know about how cool it is to travel with someone that you fall in love with. He didn't know about children, daughters. He didn't know any single one of you, not anybody here. And I just thought, he didn't know about those ornaments that I preached about on Christmas Eve, these ornaments that represent, years of travel and our family and our history and very significant events. He didn't know about all those traditions that our kids think we've done them for years and years and years. We didn't have any of that. I looked him right in the eye. I said, how do you get from there to here? It's an interesting journey, isn't it? You wake up one morning and here we are. I thought about Joseph. I thought about the husband of Mary. Thank goodness we have a brief moment with him one more time, because friends, after this moment, the lesson that you read in Matthew's Gospel, Joseph is never again mentioned by name or quote or inference anywhere in the scriptural record. This is it. I thought about Joseph being a carpenter. He was a tradesman. Very predictable life in the ancient world. You were born, you were raised, you did what your dad did, literally, if you were a man. You lived and died in the same house. And if you were lucky enough or blessed enough to have children or a family, you were counted fortunate. That was the life that Joseph was signing on to with this young woman named Mary. Now, I hasten to add this for the gentlemen in the room, and Doug Gray's announcement is just so fitting. For extra Bible points, how many times does the angel visit with Mary to tell her about all these events? In the Gospel of Luke, how many times, some of you are very good with the Bible, how many times does the angel visit with Mary? How many times do you know about? Dick G'day is holding up his one finger. One. Right? The angel comes to Mary once. Mary says yes, and she is perfect the rest of the time. She does exactly she gets God's plan. She does exactly what God tells her to do. She holds everything in her heart, and she is there all the way to the cross. How many times does Joseph get the angel knocking on the door? 3. Actually, Dick, it's 4 recorded in 2 chapters. You know how men are. The angel says, oh my God, I have to go to him again. Oh, he's not listening. I have to show up in another dream and tell him what to do, and he's going to have to do it, and then ask why, and then doubt a lot, and I have to show up again. Mary gets none of that, right? Only Joseph. So 4 times. So, okay, time number 1. Your wife's pregnant and it's not you. Oops. Well, there goes the life we had planned. What do you do then? Time number 2. Well, Herod, one of the most despotic kings in the ancient world, is coming to kill you and your wife and your kid. Get up, take your family, and flee. Now, I want to tell you, I've made this geographical journey from the south of Israel over the border into Egypt at Sinai. Actually, it's now extremely dangerous to make this trip. If you went today, you couldn't make it the same way I made it just almost 20 years ago. It is physically demanding. Can you imagine being a mother of a newborn child on a mule or a donkey or on foot? Making this trip and surviving. That's amazing. Remember, Joseph's the guy down at Home Depot. Joseph's the guy that's building homes. That's what Joseph knows. Until God says, get up, take your family, and flee. By the way, the Episcopal Church doesn't think you can take the R-rated portion of Matthew chapter 2, so they omit it. You didn't hear it. But as Joseph is fleeing with his family, Herod is butchering all these male children. Just like Pharaoh did hundreds of years earlier. And so then they're in this foreign country in Egypt. And then another dream. Okay, everyone's dead. You can come back, but don't come back to where you were. Got to go back up to Nazareth. I began to think that God is giving Joseph his story. If you read this account carefully, you can see that the story of Joseph and Mary and Jesus are reflecting perfectly the story of Israel. In Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, they're traveling the same route. God is giving Joseph his story. I started to think back over the almost 22 years of my life, and I started to understand that God's given us a story. It's a story with significance. It tells me about who I am. It tells me about why I'm the kind of husband I am, why I'm the kind of father I am, why all those traditions and those habits and the things that have impacted us. Why? It tells me why. Why am I here and not in Arizona at St. Barnabas Episcopal Church? Talk about dysfunction. Wow, why am I not there? Why didn't I go to St. James's Episcopal Church and Stewart Circle in Richmond, Virginia? And then I'll be talking to you like this most of the time. Why was it Colorado? Why was it Vail for just 2 years in 1995? I started to understand that God speaks all the time if we listen. God spoke to Mary once. A few fortunate people may just need one time. Joseph and me, we need a lot of times. It's easy for clergy to talk about God calling. People say, oh, how'd you get to Vail? I said, the church called me here. That's why I'm here. I'm from Florida. 3 degrees is not my native country, friends. The only thing I skied with until 1995 had a rope behind it. You know what I mean? God called all of us here. We all have this story. God continues to speak to us in the midst of this journey. It might be dramatic. Some of us in this room have very dramatic stories. It might be that life itself, as Joseph was warned by the angel, life itself is being threatened in some profoundly dramatic crisis way. It may not be that dramatic. But God continues to speak in the midst of our story. If we can listen. By the way, I always think about Joseph so kindly. He disappears, he vanishes. Like every good dad. By the way, where are you? Any father, we have a young father here, let me just warn you, where are you in the pictures? You're nowhere. Why? You're behind the camera. For 25 years, you vanish. Right? Joseph vanishes from the scriptural text. But we know he's there. We know he's there because Jesus survives to be able to be a young man as the story advances here in just a week's time. Mary survives. She's able to stand at the foot of the cross. No one ever tells you that in the text, but that's only because Joseph was a loving husband and faithful beyond measure. And he was an amazing father. That's how Jesus and Mary get there. So, in this new year of resolutions, it's not just about looking back, it's about looking forward. I looked at that young guy in the picture, and I said, who are you going to be a year from now? We've lost the mustache. It's a good start. But I wonder what else God has in mind. I wonder if we took a picture today and thought about a year from now. Where would God be calling us? What are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to handle our families? Those whom we love? Where are we supposed to be? What's God calling us to do that's significant and important? Friends, a very blessed and happy New Year to you. Perhaps Joseph can help you to take a look at that picture. How is it that we get from there to here? And how do we get from here beyond? In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.